Welcome everybody to another one of our YouTube series from RNAreset.com and Dr. Carolyn Dean. This particular program today is called Diabetes is Reversible. And I know that's shocking information to a lot of people. Most people consider that diabetes is kind of just a progressive chronic disease that cannot be improved upon. And, you know, they say now that there's three different kinds of diabetes. There's type 1, there's type 2, and now there's type 3 diabetes, which is actually Alzheimer's. So, you know, no matter where you're at in the spectrum, people think that it's just a sentence for a chronic impairment. But Dr. Carolyn Dean comes to you with some very good information today that is just not necessarily true. And we've got some options and opportunities for you to consider. And before I bring her on, let me just say, again, Dr. Carolyn Dean, as just a lover of health and a freedom giver for sure, she has been at the forefront of the natural health movement and natural health program for many, many years, you guys. I mean, medical doctor, she's a naturopath. She has done just about all there is to do in terms of natural health, but she's also done a lot as a medical doctor, directing clinics, working with all kinds of treatments, programs, not only in Canada, but also here in the United States. She is well respected and sought out on many levels for many reasons. She's got a lot of experience writing books as well, doing 35 different books, including the landmark Magnesium Miracle, which is an incredible presentation of information with over 600 medical references, as well as her 110 different Kindles that she's published. Ladies and gentlemen, you are speaking and are listening to a speaker, a presenter today who knows her stuff and is going to be here again to edify and encourage you and to keep you going. So toward the cures that you need, well, I shouldn't say cure, that's a bad word, toward the help that you need to consider your condition, diabetic or pre-diabetic. So welcome without any further delay, Dr. Carolyn Dean.
Thank you, Ginny. What I'm going to do is follow up from what, we get some noise happening and I'm echoing, so I'll wait a sec, Chad will fix us up. So on the first slide after the opening, what we're looking at is how endocrinology made diabetes very complex. They made it all about the hormones. We've got our insulin, we've got glucagon, we've got epinephrine, cortisol, growth hormone, and the glucagon-like peptide 1. The more they dig, the more of these hormones they'll find, and the more they'll try to say, well, you know, we're going to find the thing that we can manipulate and get rid of your diabetes. But what they aren't doing, and they aren't really caring about, is where the sugar comes from and what the sugar is doing to us. They're trying to, through dietitians especially, because doctors don't even talk to their patients about diet. The dietitians, because they think sugar, bread, fruit are all important in the diet, they kept them all in the diabetic diet, and then doctors give medications and insulin to help manipulate a bad diet. So that's the gist of what I'm talking about here. There's no point in going into all these, drilling down, as Chad would say, into the minutia of what's going on biochemically with the hormones without looking at the basics of what's this sugar doing to you, and if sugar is so bad, let's just stop it. The next slide is the conference topic list that came up most recently on my Medscape emails. And it's just to give you an idea of where allopathic medicine is in the treatment of diabetes. They're not talking about stopping sugar and balancing out your insulin. They're talking about what happens when you get diabetic neuropathy, and when your joints give out, and when you have all these symptoms and your ulcerations, and then what's the best amputation. It's a serious problem when doctors are more interested in end-stage disease than they are in preventing disease. The next slide, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on all these negatives or even the different types of diabetes. I think there's actually 5 now, Ginny. They're finding all kinds of ways people can look like they have bad blood sugar, but their organs aren't affected, and that's probably nutrient deficiency problems with diabetes. So with the diabetes statistics, we've got a prevalence of 30.3 million Americans aged 65 and older. 25% have diabetes, a quarter of the population. 1.5 million new cases every year. In pre-diabetes, younger and younger people are showing signs of pre-diabetes. It's just incredible. 7th leading cause of death in the U.S. and worldwide. What we're seeing, and I heard this on a forum, the orthomolecular service that I belong to, where we put out newsletters all the time about the good nutrients and how they're being ignored. But people all over the world who belong to our board were talking about, the incidence of diabetes in India and in Dubai, I know, in Thailand. It's just skyrocketing. As we import the Western lifestyle, we get all these side effects. The next slide, when people talk about early signs of diabetes, I mean, it's kind of a misnomer because it is really hard to find the very early signs of diabetes. So we have to be careful of how we seem to. I'm just making a sidebar here that Ginny's making a lot of noise, I think, in the background, and she doesn't realize it. So we'd like to think there are early signs of diabetes, but usually when you have the increased urination and the thirst and the dry mouth from dehydration because of the increased urination, or the itching, it's not just from dryness, but we think it's more from yeast overgrowth, which doctors don't recognize. I really shouldn't have put early signs. There are actually more late signs. The first sign is usually when on a blood test, the doctor says, oh, your blood glucose is elevated. And they'll do that a couple of times before they'll do hemoglobin A1C, which tells you what your blood sugar's been doing for a 3-month period. And if it's been elevated, then they start talking about prediabetes. But the next slide, this is what I find really important, how when you have blood sugar problems, when you have the symptoms of diabetes, when you are put on diabetic medications, then you start getting the associated conditions, the heart disease and the nerve damage and the kidney disease and the ulceration, eye disease, gum disease, sex and bladder problems. So it's these associated diseases that have got allopathic medicine really upset. And they're trying to prevent diabetes by diagnosing people earlier and giving them drugs earlier. And this is my problem with all these chronic diseases. They're trying to lower the high blood pressure diagnostic levels so that at a lower blood pressure, they can give you more drugs. And it's still all about the drugs, not realizing that it's the drugs that do have the side effects. In the next slide, I'm quoting from my Magnesium Miracle book, 2017 edition, where obesity, syndrome X, and diabetes are part of a continuum of illness that may progress to heart disease if not headed off by good diet, supplements, especially magnesium, exercise, and stress reduction. They're not separate diseases. And underlying all this misery, we find magnesium deficiency. Diabetes, that's a new medical designation, and it's a recognition that if someone is about 30 pounds overweight for more than a decade, diabetes will likely occur. And people with syndrome X are obese and on the road to diabetes with insulin resistance, and they also have hypertension, elevated cholesterol, and high levels of triglycerides. So you see why the heart disease is firmly embedded in this whole continuum. And because doctors just have drugs to manipulate disease with, they want you to take drugs earlier and earlier rather than telling you how to go about a diet intervention. The next slide, I'm taking a lot of the next slides of information from Dr. Jason Fung, my new best friend. He's a Canadian. He's a nephrologist, a kidney specialist, and he just finally had it up to his eyeballs about all the overweight diabetics who were ending up in his clinic with kidney failure, and he said something had to be done about it. This Diabetes Code is his latest book coming out next month. I've read his book, The Obesity Code, and I've mentioned the Obesity Code before. About diabetes, he says 50% of American adults are pre-diabetic or diabetic. Only diet and lifestyle changes will reverse it, not medications. And the most important thing in the treatment of diabetes is to lose weight. Now, here we're talking about type 2 diabetes. I know there are a lot of people who are on the line and have sent in questions about type 1 diabetes. Dr. Fung does work with type 1 diabetes as well, even with people who are underweight or normal weight and not obese. And we'll get to some of that in the question series. I do have to be careful because I'm not trying to treat diabetes here. I do recommend people go to dietdoctor.com for more information about finding a doctor who will work with you and your diabetes, and the program that Dr. Fung and I recommend. And the last line in the slide here, insulin is notorious for causing weight gain, and so are the diabetic drugs. The next slide about Dr. Fung's work is having to educate people and doctors who still think diabetes, as Ginny mentioned at the outset, still think diabetes is chronic, progressive, irreversible, and fatal. And part of that, maybe even most of that, is because they treat diabetes with drugs and insulin and don't stop the sugar intake, which is the true cause of the problem. In the next slide, insulin resistance, that's what they're blaming diabetes on, that the cells no longer open up to the glucose that we give it, and this extra glucose spills into the bloodstream, and then that's what's measured as our diagnosis of high blood sugar. So immediately your common sense kicks in and says, well, stop feeding the sugar. Why keep pushing sugar into the cells when the cells won't accept it? That seems to be the problem. But that's never regarded as treatment in allopathic medicine. They keep wanting to increase the insulin to keep pushing glucose into the cells. But as I mentioned, when you have too much sugar in the cells, you can't force any more in, and the cell is now resistant. And the elevated blood sugars give you the diagnosis of DM2, diabetes mellitus type 2, and you're given the first drug is metformin. It's been around for a long time, but it has a lot of side effects, and we'll get to that in the questions.
Can I help you?
We're hearing you,
Hey,
Ginny.
how are you, Monica?
Ginny, we're hearing you.
Good. I'm doing a seminar with Dr. Dean right now. Can I give you a call back? I know you called me the other day. Let me finish this and I'll call you right back. Okay. Thank you, love.
Chad, will you email Ginny and tell her that somehow she's audible to us? She'll be so frustrated at that. Okay, so then the elevated blood sugars with the metformin, it diverts excess sugar to the liver, which then redirects it to the kidneys and the nerves and the eyes and the heart. Much of this excess sugar will also just get turned into fat. So we're not changing the continuum of high blood sugar with the metformin. We're just sort of trying to keep the people on the diet that's causing the problem, and as I mentioned earlier, treat it with drugs. It just doesn't seem common sense at all. And the next slide, still on insulin resistance, producing excess insulin to deal with carbs puts you on the road toward diabetes and tissue damage. Sugar levels keep rising, and your doctor just doubles the dose of the medication and adding more meds and finally insulin injections. There are probably 3 or 4 different types of diabetes drugs that people can be given and are given in combination. And then finally insulin injections. And insulin injections are mostly synthetic now. They used to have human insulin, but they can't keep creating that.
Carolyn, your mic came undone. Hello, Carolyn? No. Carolyn. Carolyn, your mic came undone. Okay, everybody, we have a little bit of a technical complication. Sorry about that. Carolyn's microphone has come undone and she's probably not aware of it. So I'm going to try to I can't hear a thing. Oh. Okay, hi everybody, it's Ginny. Okay, Carolyn? Carolyn, are you back?
Hello?
Yep, you're back. I can hear you now.
Oh boy, I don't know what happened. I've changed my headset from my iPhone little earbuds. So thank you for your patience. Where I was is the second slide on insulin resistance. Producing excess insulin to deal with carbs puts you on the road toward diabetes and tissue damage. Sugar levels keep rising and your doctor just doubles the dose of the medication, adding more meds and finally insulin injections. Your blood sugar may look okay on paper, but your diabetes is getting worse along with drug side effects. So this is what allopathic medicine does. It wants your blood levels of whatever to look okay on paper, but it's not realizing that to get there is causing you side effects. So this is why doctors say diabetes is a chronic fatal disease with complications of heart attacks, congestive heart failure, strokes, kidney failure, amputations, and blindness, because they are treating symptoms and not the cause. In the next slide, what Dr. Fung says, and he's pretty blatant about this. As your eyes go blind, your kidneys fail, hearts fail, the brain develops Alzheimer's, fatty liver, diabetic neuropathy, where the medications and insulin does nothing to slow down the progression of this organ damage, because they do not eliminate the toxic sugar load from our bodies. And what Dr. Fung mentioned in an article I was reading, even though there have been 7 multinational, multi-centered, randomized controlled trials of having the diabetes patients do a very tight blood sugar control with medications, it failed to demonstrate reductions in heart disease, the major killer of diabetic patients. We pretend that using medications to lower blood sugar makes people healthier, but it's a lie, he says. You can't use drugs to cure a dietary disease. So this complex endocrinology does yield to a simple solution. Stop the sugar input and then burn it off. And as Dr. Fung says, it's free. There are no drugs, no surgery, no cost. And we also learned that Dr. William Banting of Banting and Best fame, they discovered insulin. And they're Torontonians, actually, and that's where Dr. Fung lives. Banting and Best understood 150 years ago that refined carbohydrates led to obesity. So refined carbohydrates now in 2018 are still causing the problem. And you may remember I did a blog a little while back about this half a century of sugar abuse that we've been suffering, where 50 years ago, there was a scientific study that the sugar lobby groups suppressed, the sugar industry suppressed, that showed that sugar causes heart disease. And on the way to causing heart disease, it was also causing high blood sugar. So refined carbohydrates increase insulin in the body that leads to obesity. And as I said, we knew about that 150 years ago. But the dietary treatment of diabetes, it fell to the wayside when the medications started coming on board. The next slide is basically let's stop sugar. That's a treatment that we're looking at. Eliminate all sugar and refined starches from your diet. Sugar has no nutritional value and can therefore be eliminated. Starches are simply long chains of sugars, and highly refined starches such as flour or white rice are quickly broken down into glucose. Too much dietary protein is also converted into glucose by the body, so that's why I do recommend a combination of the yeast-free diet and the ketogenic diet for diabetes. We have to look at the yeast-free diet because it is the sugars that are stimulating yeast overgrowth. In the next slide, I'm looking at the burning off of the sugars.
Yes, thank you.
First of all, you stop eating sugar, and then secondly, you burn it off with fasting. Now, both of these recommendations, I know people are probably just kind of freaking out a little bit, because how do you stop all your carbs, and how do you stop eating when you're we are addicted to food. We have to eat it every day, so we are addicted. But what we have done with the previous ketogenic webinar and my book on the ketogenic diet is shown you how supporting the body with nutrients can be very helpful in allowing you to shift your diet. So burning it off with fasting, you have to know intellectually before you accept it kind of intuitively. When you eat, your body stores food energy. When you fast, your body burns food energy. If you simply lengthen out your periods of overnight fasting, you can burn off the stored sugar. Diabetes is excess glucose in the body. Burning it off will reverse diabetes. Fasting has been practiced for at least 2,000 years. It's the oldest dietary therapy known. If you don't eat, your blood sugars come down. If you don't eat, you will lose weight. And as Dr. Fung says, why aren't we implementing this solution? The next slide, I'm going to talk about magnesium and the importance of magnesium, but just to go into a little more about why we aren't implementing this solution about avoiding sugar and fasting. We're addicted to sugar. And if we just go to the diet where there are nutrient deficiencies that have occurred because of our farming practices, then it is hard for people to get enough nutrients in a quote good diet. Stress is huge in causing symptoms of diabetes, but I think it's because it causes magnesium deficiency. So what I'm going to move to with the magnesium and then with our formulas is ways that the body can take nutrients on board to support the body balancing its blood sugar and not being so addicted. It puts the yeast treatment into play as well, because we can be addicted to sugar because the yeast is craving the sugar. So there's several layers of manipulation that we can do to make it easier for us to quit sugar and do some overnight fasting. So this slide, next slide, you've probably been looking at it already, about diabetes and magnesium. Magnesium deficiency is an independent predictor of diabetes. It's in all the medical books, but doctors really don't pay attention. Diabetics need more magnesium because they lose more through their excess urination. And magnesium is necessary for the production, function, and transport of insulin. It's necessary to make and secrete insulin. It facilitates carbohydrate metabolism, and it allows insulin to transfer glucose into cells, keeping it out of the cells. I think that's an edit there that I need to do. If you don't keep it inside cells, it's out in the bloodstream, then that's where you start getting the diagnosis of diabetes. The next slide is tyrosine kinase allows glucose to enter into the cells, and this enzyme is magnesium dependent. So if you want to look at the different enzymatic functions, I've just quickly put this slide up here, where 7 of the 10 enzymes needed to metabolize glucose are magnesium dependent. And I've been saying all day and every day about the Krebs cycle that makes energy. 6 of the 8 steps require magnesium. And the low energy in diabetics may be due to magnesium deficiency. The next set of slides goes into the complement formulas and how we lay them out as with regards to balancing your blood sugar and making you less sugar addicted, allowing your body to feel supported if you're going on overnight fasting. So I'll stop here and see if Ginny, do you want me to answer any questions now, or do you want to continue on with the complement formulas at this stage?
Well, let's talk a little bit, Carolyn, about just the role of magnesium in diabetes. And you did touch on it here, but the thing I think that a lot of people have to understand is this original statement that you made where you said that magnesium is an independent predictor. What I see a lot going on, and one of our people here on the chat line commented that there are a lot of people in the UK that are using low carb diets in order to control diabetes. And we talked about it here, the keto diet. But that is not a replacement for magnesium supplementation. Can you go into that?
Right. I mean, the diet that you're eating, keto diet, low carb, high carb, whatever carb, is going to be deficient in nutrients just because all those foods come from the same agricultural soil. So I've said many, many times when I write or talk about nutrients and about diet is that ship has passed. I mean, we cannot depend on diet alone anymore, or maybe ever again, because the nutrients just aren't there. And also our requirement for nutrients, I think, has escalated with the massive stress, the pollution, the media effects on our brain, just the constant conflict that we have to process in our brain that require more nutrients, and we just cannot get them from the diet.
One of the things that Dr. Jason Fung does say in his book, and he's done this work for many, many years now with type 2 and type 1 diabetics, is that when he was trying to teach people how to eat properly for their insulin, in order to regulate their insulin, whether they were keeping a diet journal or whatever, they just couldn't do it. And that's when he came up with the idea of don't eat anything at all. Just forget it. Just fast and forget it. And let's try to get it down that way so you don't take yourself out of this precarious balance. And one of the things that he has also talked about, and many others have talked about, is the importance of electrolytes and salt and everything else like that, and this glucose metabolism. So magnesium is definitely an electrolyte, correct?
Yes, and one of your first slides is going to be on getting adequate hydration with sea salted water. So, Chad, if you could go to that first slide after the complement formula slide, it's all laid out there. How common dehydration is in diabetes because you're urinating out. To try to dilute out the sugar in your urine, your body has to flush it out because a high level of sugar is an imbalance in the body, and the body does flush it out. And where you want your half of your body weight in pounds to drink that in ounces of water, and you want your Celtic salt, Himalayan salt in every quart of water, a quarter teaspoon. You want, as I say above, your minerals in the cells, and water will follow inside the cells, and then your cells will be working again. They won't be dehydrated. And so the sea salt we recommend, and then we add the Remag and Remite for higher doses of the really important trace minerals.
Okay, very good. Very good. Excellent. Okay, and a lot of people had a general, we took a lot of questions before the webinar. Carolyn, do you want to go into those one-on-one, to break them down individually, or did they have some general themes to them? What did you think about that?
Well, we did have some good questions. People are asking what is the pre-diabetic fasting level, and you can look these things up. See, the point is with treating diabetes is to get to a balance point where you're not eating any added sugars, where you're keeping your carbohydrates low in a ketogenic level at 20 to 40 grams a day. And then you check your blood glucose. Because right now you're checking your blood glucose and you're still eating whatever, bread, fruit. You're still really just bouncing your blood sugars up and down. So get to a stable point of your diet and then check your blood sugars. And there were a lot of questions about type 1 diabetes. And as I mentioned earlier, and I'll repeat, go to dietdoctor.com and Google type 1 diabetes and look at some of the research that's being done. There are, at this point, small clinical trials where people are reducing their hemoglobin A1C and reducing their insulin requirement, and they're losing weight. Now, I can't say if this program, if the complete limit formulas and keto and yeast diet are going to cure type 1 diabetes, and we would never be allowed to say that. But any improvement is going to be helpful for people. And asking about young people and diabetes, again, I think you have to consult with a diabetes ketogenic doctor. And I know that's hard, but you start with dietdoctor.com and ask about childhood diabetes. I know our formulas, half the adult dose of our formulas can be used for children. Someone's asking about insulin levels. It's the same thing. You can Google for the kind of insulin reference ranges for fasting and after having a glucose tolerance test. But let's do those tests when you're off carbohydrates, because the carbohydrate, I know when you're doing a glucose tolerance test, that's 75 grams of carbohydrates, but how your body responds is in relation to your previous carbohydrate intake. The other great question was about metformin, people who are being told they're pre-diabetic, and women with polycystic ovarian syndrome, they're being told to take metformin as a preventive. But you really have to look at the side effects of these medications and see, well, do I just drug my blood sugar or do I starve my blood sugar? If you drug your blood sugar, then you have to be aware of the side effects. Stomach problems, diarrhea, nausea, stomach pain, heartburn, and gas with metformin. There's a really strong black box warning about lactic acidosis with metformin. And what's interesting is magnesium does help with lactic acid buildup, but I would never say that you would treat lactic acidosis with magnesium. And with metformin, you can't drink alcohol. If you have kidney problems, which you will develop with diabetes, maybe because of the metformin, then you have to avoid taking metformin. With the kidney problems, avoid it if you have liver problems. And there are a lot of drug interactions. Someone was asking about yeast and diabetes, and as I said, it's very important to treat yeast. And maybe the one last thing I'll say, there are people who are emailing in saying, well, there are these products that I can take that will lower my blood sugar. So I take a pill, then I eat my carbs, and it'll lower them. So there's lots of kind of gimmicky things, I call them, as a way to cheat your body, basically. It's the allopathic medicine and drug company way of telling you can have your cake and eat it too, and you just have to have a drug to balance out your blood sugar. And that, to me, that just, it's all sideways with you trying to take responsibility for your health, where you do want to eat your cake and not have any side effects. But you've got to be in charge of your own health. You've got to do what makes common sense and not just get into this uh, business of trying to manipulate your blood sugar while taking a product. And we don't even know the side effects of these products. We certainly know the side effects of the drugs, but it's not really balancing the structure and function of your body properly. So anyway, I did a lot of talking there. Let's go back to you, Ginny, and we need to go over the complement formulas first.
Okay, and one more quick question along all those lines is, can you talk a little bit about fruit? Because fruit seems to have kind of a high holy ground. Everybody thinks you need it, but it seems to be causing complications. So can you talk about that for a minute?
Right. Fruit was only meant to be eaten when it was ripe in the fall season to build up fat and triglycerides in the body to deal with winter starvation. That's it. It was not meant to be eaten every day. It doesn't have the nutrients it used to because it's grown in soil that's been depleted. A lot of the raw food and vegan, vegetarian diets eulogize fruit and, like you say, make it out to be some superhero because they want to give people something sweet in order to pull them into their diet. But if you listen to The Bitter Truth by the pediatric endocrinologist, whose name Ginny will remind me of,
Dr. Robert Lustig.
He definitely told us that fruit is problematic. It came to the fore when there was a commercial application of high fructose corn syrup into sodas and everything that needed a sweetener because it was a fruit sugar, and it really caused a lot of problems. High fruit intake is bad for yeast. It's bad for your blood sugar. There's a lot I could say about it, but if you have to just stick with 1 or 2 pieces of fruit a day, and in the ketogenic diet, try to make them berries, which have less sugar involved. So yeah, stay away from fruit.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Excellent. Okay. All right. Very good. So let's go on to the products and we talk a little bit about, Joy just asked, can you talk about your protein powder? Yes, Joy, we will talk about it because it's a great asset on a keto diet. It's a great asset. So again, what we're talking about is starting with the adequate hydration. Carolyn did go over that, and using your sea salted water as a basis. And you can start doing that right now. You know, wherever you're at, you can start doing it right now. And anybody you know can start doing it right now. And the other thing is, I don't know if any of you guys have tried this, but if you take a, let's say you decide to do the ketogenic diet, or just even try to cut your carbs, and you start to have sugar cravings, if you put salt on your tongue, your craving will cease. So sometimes people are so confused with their body signals after having been bamboozled for so long with bad food that they don't even know whether or not they're hungry. And technically, probably most of us aren't hungry. We're not anywhere near what true hunger is. But we have this constant demand for satisfaction that comes from these imbalances in the body. So number one, start with your adequate hydration, your sea salt. And if you start to get a sugar craving or carb craving, just take a little pinch of that pink Himalayan salt or your Celtic salt, put it on your tongue and just let it sit there. Swallow it, rinse it down, and you'll be surprised at how quickly that dissipates. In the next slide that Chad's going to put up for us, we're going to, again, talk about, let's see what it is going to be, our next slide. Oh, Remag, our wonderful Remag. And everybody knows about Remag. We hope you do. Maybe you don't. But the most important thing about Remag is what we've said here about diabetes. Food metabolism 3,750 different functions of protein metabolism require magnesium. Your Krebs cycle, as Carolyn talked about. You've got carbohydrate regulation. Carolyn talked about that. You've got your insulin regulation, and you've got your blood sugar balance. Now, what's so important about Remag is there's none other like it. You've got to have the liquid form and the 60,000 part per million concentration, the picometer size, all work together in this special like little juju to get into your cells and into the heart center of what's going on in your body and really make a deep impact. So we want you to use the Remag. Your dosing, you start with very small increments and build your way up until you get to those good doses, those therapeutic doses. And that information always comes through customer service. It'll come in your box if you haven't ordered it yet and you want to. But Remag is essential. Again, a stabilized picoionic magnesium. Okay, now the next slide we want to talk about is our, we talked about, thank you, Chad, the magnesium allowing the insulin to usher in the glucose, and also the stress chemical cortisol. You guys, cortisol prevents people from being in ketosis almost as much as insulin does. You've got to work with your cortisol, get it down. A lot of people who have thyroid issues and adrenal issues have a cortisol imbalance as well. Magnesium will help calm and smooth that all out. The other thing that's going to help with that is our Remite. And I think that's probably the next slide is our Remite. And that is going to help with your adrenals and your thyroid. Again, a 12-part multiple mineral. It's going to support the structure and function of all the organs and glands of the body. And that is a big job, and it's so important, not just your thyroid, but your pineal gland. It's going to help your adrenals. It's going to help everything, your entire endocrine system. It's going to help with a lot of different hormone manufacturing. You've got your chromium, zinc, iodine, manganese, magnesium, and selenium are all associated with balancing blood sugar. And as more nutritional testing is done, we will discover that all these minerals are important in blood sugar balance. They just absolutely have to be. And of course, we don't want to get into talking about nutritional testing and why it isn't done the way it could be done, because they're not trying to prove that nutrients can be that kind of a remedy for you. But we just know that it is and that they are. And so again, as more nutritional testing is done, we're going to discover that. But you can discover it yourself right now by just using the Remite. And we have tons of testimonials about how significant this formula is for people. I think it's just so wonderful. And when I first started using Remite, I was addicted to coffee, and I used my Remite to get me off of coffee. Because it just gives me such a great energy. I just drink it first thing in the morning, and I'm just like up and out the door, and it's fantastic. And I don't miss caffeine anymore. I think it's absolutely wonderful. The next thing that we want to do is the next slide that we want to look at is our Realign. I always say that Realign is like Cinderella in the basement doing all the dirty work while all the sisters are at the ball. Because I'm telling you, Remag and Remite are like the sisters at the ball. They're out there dancing and twirling around and having a great time. But Realign is down in the guts. And I'm talking about in your liver where stuff is happening. And Realign is down there working. It's got an L-methionine, which is a precursor to glutathione. And so it allows the liver to detox itself beautifully. It's got the L-taurine in it with the sulfur for the liver sulfation detox. And it's got several B vitamins in methylated and natural forms, which donate methyl groups for the liver detox, for digesting food, blood sugar balance, mental health, and regulating gene expression. And we just say this, we're not encouraging alcohol consumption and that kind of thing. We're just saying that we have had a lot of customers tell us that Realign is effective, that it helps metabolizing alcohol. It stops intoxication and eliminates hangovers. And that's, you know, that is a powerful reaction in the body to be accomplished with a single supplement. And that's why we bring up that point, is so you have an idea of the power that Realign provides. Now, one thing, Carolyn, is somebody's commenting on the chat line and they're saying, I tried taking my magnesium by Epsom salts and it caused a hyperthyroid effect. Can you answer that?
Well, yes, one of our customer service FAQs, we do say that when that Krebs cycle gets activated by magnesium, it can rev you up and give you more energy. I don't know if that's the hyperactive feeling. I don't know if blood tests confirm it, but that can be happening. You can get revved up. Magnesium is important in making thyroid hormones. Even before Remind came along, people were saying their thyroid health improved with just the Remag. If someone is already on thyroid medication and their thyroid improves, they do have to look at weaning back or off their medication under their doctor's supervision. So there's a lot of layers to that question, but I don't know specifically what our chat line person's talking about for herself.
Right. She was just saying that she took an Epsom salt bath, that the blood test confirmed that it gave her a hypothyroid effect and that her heart was racing and all those other kinds of things. So,
I can't really say any more about it. Everybody is so incredibly individual in the way they react to things. Is that a good thing, bad thing, indifferent? You know, it's good that the body does react in a certain way to nutrients. It's a good sign that the body's reactive, but maybe some doctor might say, oh, that's too much of a reaction. I would say if you're going to do Epsom salts in the future, do less Epsom salts in your bath, or look at your magnesium levels and check into things. But I can't comment any more about an individual reaction.
Okay, very good. All right, on our next slide, Chad, what we're going to be talking about here again today is the Restructure powder. I'm very excited about Restructure. I have been doing the keto diet along with Carolyn. We decided to do it at the first of the year just for our own personal reasons. And I always like to do everything Carolyn recommends because I know it's health-giving and life-giving. So actually, and my soon-to-be husband is doing it with me. Restructure's been great. It is, as a product, it's a balanced protein, and it's got the fat, carb, and protein all in balance. So it's I think 60, 30, 10. And it's got the 11 grams of protein, which is not high enough to turn into glucose. Some of these protein powders out there, you've got 30 grams of protein and no fat to balance it off, and it's going to turn straight into sugar. So you want to watch those. I saw one at Sam's Club the other day. I can't remember what it was called. It wasn't necessarily a supplement. It was just this one product, and it had like 1 gram of fat and 30 grams of protein. And, people were buying it by the case. And I thought, ooh, that's probably not ideal for a ketogenic diet again. Restructure is the perfect meal for somebody with high blood sugar and also with a yeast overgrowth because it has such a low glycemic index. You can mix it with water, coconut milk, almond milk. You can put heavy cream in it if you want to boost the fat content. Again, it just depends on your macros and how much fat you need to eat every day for your program. And you can also add nuts, coconut oil, or eggs for what we call a keto kick. It tastes delicious, and everybody in my household just loves it. Most of our customers just love it, and they thoroughly enjoy the taste of it. And then let's see, what else was that question about? I just want to make sure I asked everything. So if you want to stay away from grains and dairy and go keto, Restructure is a fantastic way to do it. And the other question that I have here, because I'm sorry, I got to kind of watch both, is Can you talk about when in the day we should be taking all the supplements? Should we take them all together separately and with food? That's all spelled out, Annie. And it really just depends on which products you're taking. And also it depends on your body and how you like to do things. Remember, these are all nutrients, and remember, they're all foods. So they're not, something, it's just something where you have to kind of pay attention to your body and notice how you feel good. Some people like to take their minerals in the morning, kick off their day. Dr. Dean recommends putting them in the water, sipping them throughout the day. Some people want to, shoot them and get out the door. Some people love to take them at night because Remag is so great at helping people sleep. The Restructure, you can eat all day long. It's not limited to what time you want to use that or enjoy that. Sometimes at night, if I'm having like a little bit of a craving, I'll just pack half a packet of Restructure and a little bit of water with some coconut milk, and boom, I've got a delicious little snack, and it's wonderful. Realign, you do want to take with meals. So that, again, depends on your schedule of when you like to eat. The other thing is that Restructure is fantastic with intermittent fasting. And the more you learn about intermittent fasting, as if you explore that, especially with regard to, again, controlling your blood sugar, you can decide to, like, say, eat in an 8-hour window. So, like, for example, I only eat between 11 a.m. and 7 p.m. And then the rest of the time I'm fasting. And I've gotten to the point now where I'm hardly hungry and I have to remind myself to eat anyway, mostly at 11 a.m. What you can do with the Restructure is it's a great way to break your fast. So you don't eat in the late evening into the early part of the morning. Get up, you have your minerals, tool around, do your thing, blah, blah, blah. 11:30, lunchtime starts to roll around, and you mix up some Restructure, throw some good healthy fats in it, and boom, you're so satisfied. It's so filling. And that's one thing Greg complains about. It's just like, oh, I'm so full all the time because you're eating all these great healthy fats. And then again, just throughout the day, you can make your meals accordingly and enjoy them with the Realign, and it's just wonderful. And the Remite, as somebody asked, do we take both Remag and Remite, or does Remite have the same magnesium content as Remag? And Remite has 31 milligrams of Remag in it, but Remag is the champion of its own, and it stands on its own. Each teaspoon has 300 milligrams of magnesium in it. And that's a 60,000 part per million concentration of picometer magnesium. So that's like saying, you can drive a car. Well, everybody can drive a car, but not everybody gets to drive a Lamborghini. And Remag is the Lamborghini of magnesium. So it's got some power behind it. Remite has got all those other minerals in a beautiful little balance. And so there is a pinch of magnesium in there, but it's not enough to supplement on the regular of what you want to accomplish if you're using magnesium as a regular dietary supplement. Let's see. Okay. Oh, Joy asked, how much weight have you lost? Well, I'm happy with how much I've lost. I don't like to talk about my weight, but I'll say I'm happy with it. It's not like other things where I've gone on programs, because I have been a professional yo-yo dieter my whole life. See, I had no idea what my problem was. But I have been a professional dieter my whole life, and I will say this: I am very happy with how I feel, and I'm very happy with what I've lost, and I'm not looking at the scale going, oh my God, I can't believe I'm giving up all these things and I'm still only losing a pound. It's not like that. And actually, you're really not giving up much. You're really just giving up crap. Oh, excuse my language. And then on top of that, you're gaining so many healthy foods, and you really are, full most of the time. Okay. So let's see, what else do we need to talk about? I think, what's the next slide, chat? Oh, our RNA drops. Ding, ding, ding. RNA drops are so fantastic, you guys. It's really hard to even describe the fullness of what they do. They are what we say, it says on the slide, many people experience the wonders of the RNA drops, and they affect everybody in a unique and individual way. I think what we've got here is the complement of the homeopathic approach to working with supplementation, where you're picking up on a resonance, on a frequency, it's carrying forward and it's building through dilution. But then also you've got the biological attributes of what are in the RNA drops, which are these biological sugars, glyconutrients, and other things that are feeding the cells. One thing about the RNA drops is they seem to have a stress-releasing effect. And we noticed that when we were in Wisconsin a couple years ago. We were working with the whole group of practitioners and holistic doctors. And we hooked up to a Zyto machine, read the drops, and then had everybody get on it and use them. And what we found was that there were different little out of balance stressors in the body that were soothed, smoothed, or even eliminated after people used the drops. And so that was just so exciting for us, because that is our basic premise. The RNA drops are the relax and allow drops. And what we want to say here is that once you give your body the basic building blocks, you've got to let go and let it do its thing. And I see this all the time in customer service, because I tell you, there's so much information out there on the internet, and people are trying to micromanage their bodies. We got to stop doing that, ladies and gentlemen. You give your body the basic building blocks, and then you honor it, and you trust its intelligence, and you trust that it will balance, and you trust that it is going to perform, because its impulse is for life, not for death. Regardless of what everybody says, the impulse in the body is for life, and it is always going to find a way for life. And that's what is so great about the drops. They're compatible with life. They are a true champion of life and living eternally and forever and evermore. And they just have a way of smoothing out stress in the mind, and allowing people to just feel good and relax as their body makes those changes. Okay. Anything else, Carolyn?
No, good coverage of everything. I just want to emphasize this balanced state that our bodies really are mostly in. If you look at the old scales, the tippy scales, there's a fulcrum in the middle and two pans on either side. And for the most part, our bodies are in balance, can be in balance. This is part of you're healthier than you think, because when you start putting the labyrinth of your mind into this process, just like Ginny said, if you try to micromanage your bodies, you're actually putting your thumb on one side of the scale, and you're trying to manipulate it, or you're doing a bad lifestyle, bad diet. And bad is a bad word to use, but just to be clear. And then you're trying to put your other thumb on the other side of the scales and treat that diet and lifestyle with drugs or supplements. We're saying take your thumbs off the scale, just do the completement formulas, which are incredibly balanced themselves, and allow your body to get back where it wants to be, where your DNA tells it should be, where you trust your body to take care of you and itself, and you don't give over your responsibility to your body to the specialty of medicine that is really now specializing in drugs, not in you. You are the specialist that knows the most about your own body.
Absolutely. And the other thing too is you'll notice on this screen, the next thing we want to talk about for a minute is the other thing that the formulas will do is help you manage yeast overgrowth. And especially this keto diet combined with the Remag and our other protocol, yeast overgrowth in the gut is caused by high blood sugar. And it's also used from the use of antibiotics and cortisone drugs. What you want to do is you can follow the protocol that we've talked about in the Reset the Yeast Connection. If you need that support, just email us at support@RNA Reset and let us know. And we will send you those guidelines, but you'll find how complementary these are, because at her heart, Dr. Dean has always been trying to get rid of excess sugars and carbohydrates in the body, and to free up the body's biochemical processes to focus on healthy cell replication and not just the constant offloading of sugar. I mean, this constant offloading of sugar is just what is killing people. It's straight up very simple. I think we also too want to share with you that we have some great parting gifts today. I think in our next slide, we're going to talk about that. If you need additional resources, you've got the Magnesium Miracle at Amazon. Please, if you've read it, write a great review. We want people to have the benefit of having this information. We've got 8 free books for you under the book section at drcarolyndeanlive.com. That's our radio archive. We've got products worldwide at rnareset.com, and in the UK, Naomi Murray and her staff at Botanica Health do a great job of providing people throughout the UK and Europe with our products. Dr. Carolyn Dean's blog, www.drcarolyndean.com. Fantastic information constantly. Again, our radio show archives, drcarolyndeanlive.com. If you haven't subscribed to us by podcast, you can do that too on iTunes. And that's a great way to stay on top of the radio show content every single week. The topic is always so good and rich, and people's legitimate questions really just help to make that such a diverse and wonderful show. And then, of course, if you have a question, I wonder what Dr. Dean thinks about this. I wonder what Dr. Dean thinks about that. Just Google your question and then type in Carolyn Dean, MD, MD&D, and you'll see. I mean, she's probably written at least 6 articles on it. It's so incredible. All the different things that she's written on and that she's knowledgeable about. Okay, now let's see. Next slide. Free bonuses. Okay, I want to let you guys know that we have some great bonus material for you today at rnareset.com, diabetes / and then diabetes/gifts. And one of the things that we want you to be able to do is to try the restructure. We want you to be able to try it because it's such a great way to transition, just as some person said, wrote perfectly in our thing here today, from being on grains and into a grain-free, very healthy, wonderful keto diet. And so if you go to rnareset.com/diabetes gifts, you're going to see our offer of restructure packets reduced. And the price is reduced. I think we have these little restructure packets. They're great. They're usually $1.99. I think the price is 30% off, which takes them down to $1.39. And I think that if you do the math and you calculate that each canister of restructure is 22 servings, by the time you multiply that by 22 packets, you can actually get a canister of restructure for almost just about $30. So that's a great discount on restructure all the way around. If you go to rnareset.com/diabetes-gifts, that's where you're going to get your coupon codes and whatever you need to make that purchase. And that offer is going to expire midnight of this weekend. So be sure to do that quickly before that expires, because some people say, oh, I'll get back to it, and then they don't. So again, our great bonus material today at rnareset.com/diabetes-gifts. Take advantage of that restructure offer. If you've never used it, buy some. And if you have used it, get more and give yourself a price break by bundling those packets and getting them that way. Okay, I think that's a wrap up. We've got 2 questions here, Carolyn, if you've got time for them, and then we can wrap up the show.
Sure, Jenny. And in the gifts, you'll see I've given 3 modules from my 104 module to your online wellness program. A module on yeast-free eating, a module on how to eat leftovers without the mold, yeast, bacteria, and a module on protein powders that follows up on the restructure that Ginny's been telling you about. And I have written a booklet on restructure as well that you can find at dr.drcarolyndeanlive.com. So yes, questions, Ginny, go ahead.
Okay. Somebody typed in, I tried Prescript Assist and became constipated. Is that normal? And should I continue taking it?
Well, constipation is a factor of many things. If the Realign was starting to help detoxify the body, you really have to drink more water when you detoxify, or have more fiber. There's a shift that you can do in your diet that will help avoid the constipation. It's not a quote, an effect of Realign to cause constipation.
Okay. And also Jim Nichols typed in, would iodine be contraindicated in ESRF? But I don't know what ESRF is, Carolyn.
I know, it's amazing how medicine has gotten so used to these acronyms. What is it, EFIF? Sorry?
No, ESRF.
EFRF, medicine. Let me see if anything comes up. Maybe he's typed in. Haven't got a clue.
Okay, yeah, I've never even heard of it before, so I don't know what that is. And then Joy just asked, is there a special first-time purchase or package for the whole system? The Total Body Reset is available on our website at all times. You can get a 5% off discount for subscribe and save, and that's a standing offer, so that there's no time frame for that. That's the way that goes. Okay, I think we're all caught up and everything's on track, and I think we've answered all the questions, and I think we did a great job, and there's just tons of great information here. And again, support SUPPORT at RNAreset.com. Okay, hold on. James is telling us that ESRF is end-stage renal failure.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, end-stage renal failure, I do talk about the need for magnesium for the kidneys for people on dialysis, and lay that out in the Magnesium Miracle 2017. But you can ask support at rnareset.com, ask customer service for the whole excerpt of that chapter from the book. And what was the question?
Iodine contraindicated.
I don't see why, but I don't recommend iodine. And the only iodine I recommend is the low dose, well absorbed iodine in Remite. I think high dose iodine is not beneficial in the long run. What happens when you use a cofactor like iodine in a metabolic process, you have the left-hand side of a chemical equation and the right-hand side. When you pump too much of the iodine into the left side of the equation, you increase the chemical on the right side of the equation, and then it needs more cofactors in order to proceed. So you create this buildup of a chemical that then can cause problems downstream. So I do not agree in high dose therapy of any minerals or nutrients except magnesium. And I want to apologize. We had a lot of technical problems in this webinar. I don't know if we'll be able to edit them out, but we will definitely work on figuring out what happened there. So I really do apologize. And thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you, everybody. It was great to have you along. And don't forget to take advantage of that restructure offer. I want to see everybody use it, and email me and tell me what you think about it.